Grand Rising, I'm Ron Usha and welcome to another show on Conversations on the Spiritual Journey. This morning I'm speaking with Evolutionary Astrologer, Amy. Grand Rising, Amy.
Grand Rising.
And how are you this morning?
I'm great, thanks. All well.
Before we start, I'll just read Amy's bio. Amy is an evolutionary astrologer who has been studying astrology for well over 20 years and has been practicing professionally for about 10 years. She is passionate about astrology and is fully committed to helping people to understand their soul's purpose and to create their greatest potential in this lifetime. Amy is also a self-taught painter and Reiki practitioner, and she does her best to send healing energy into all that she does. For the past 10 years, she has been writing an astrological blog twice a month for the full moon and the new moon, which is very much her labor of love. Her intention is to inspire and help guide us through these unprecedented times. Thank you, Amy. Now, Amy, when did you first discover astrology?
Well, astrology has always been a part of my life because my mum's always been really interested in the sun sign astrology. So I guess since I was born, it's been a part of my life, you know. And then I was in America for some time when I was in my early 20s. And I went over there for love and then got my heart broken. And so I'd kind of already been delving into the astrology at that point. But at that point, I kind of thought, well, I felt like I needed to go home, basically, because it was just, my heart really was shattered. But I didn't want to go home kind of just heartbroken with my tail between my legs. So I asked my mum to find me an astrology course, and she did. And so she found herself a hypnotherapy course, which is what she needed to do for herself, and then found the astrologer on that. And he happened to be an evolutionary astrologer, which is the type of astrology which I think actually suits me the best. And also, I mean, it's all fate, isn't it, in a way, you know, like we find the right people at the right time. And then he taught me, and then I ended up going back to America after that. And I think really what happened then was astrology was always part of it, and I was still doing charts, but I wasn't living my full potential. I was part of a wonderful community, and I was there for 10 years, and I was waitressing for a living, camping in my off time, learned to paint, had a wonderful life, wonderful community, and a really great, you know, experience. It was wonderful. But I remember my boss saying to me in about 2008, 2009, he said, Amy, he said, I love having you here. You know, I was at the hub of the community. I was an asset to the place. He said, you know, he said, I love having you here, but I feel like there's so much more to you, you know. And I suppose then in 2010, I had the great kind of life-changing experience, which astrologically is very, very significant. But anyway, I'll go into that in a second. So I smashed into a tree on a rope swing in the Pine Barrens and shattered my heel. And of course, you can't waitress with a broken heel. So that kind of forced me into astrology and painting and things like that in order to earn a living, literally. So it feels like that moment, which was when Pluto was square my Pluto, Pluto is the soul in evolutionary astrology. So I was basically having a grand cosmic kick up my bum at that moment, and it led me to come home in the end. I made the decision that I needed to come home and heal my roots. Literally, you know, you break your heel. The heel is the connection to the ground, to get the connection to the roots, and I needed to do some healing around my father and all sorts, and get back to my family, basically. So it led me back to England, and since then I refound my astrology teacher again, and he mentored me. And so I'm very, very grateful to him. So I had one-on-one mentorship from him, and then kind of have continued from there.
It's amazing sometimes, isn't it, when you're with someone who you respect and they say to you, it's time to go, because they know that you finish your journey with them and it's time to move on. I think that is a sign of a great teacher or a great mentor who can see that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I most definitely needed to kind of leave America at that time. It's interesting. I had a little bit of a look at your chart, you know, to see what was, what was going on in the here and now. And we'll go into that a little bit later. But I actually noticed that you've got a similar aspect to the one that I had when I left America, when I had my life-changing experience. It's not as extreme, but the Pluto, the soul is currently node pulling you forward in growth. And yeah, that's what was going on when I had my life-changing experience. You don't have Pluto square Pluto, so it's not going to be, smashing into a tree or anything like that, but it does feel like a time of profound growth for you as well. And I guess I mentioned that because my boss back in America, him saying, I feel like there's more for you, there's more for you to do, it's, at the time I was kind of like in my south node, which is where you're coming from in your, in your growth, in your evolution. So I was kind of stuck in being kind of like comfortably happy and taken care of. I kind of had a family feeling. It was kind of keeping me a little bit small and a little bit stuck, and but it was fine and it was comfortable. But I needed to move towards my north node and walk across a burning bridge and not know whether you can go back, and that's what happened after that. So yeah, it was good.
Sometimes it takes a really big thing for you to open your eyes and to see a big shift in your life.
Oh, it was massive. I spent the whole year like going slightly crazy, painting like a mad woman, tears coming out. I don't know, it was just like yeah, it was a very, very profound experience for me. And I think, a lot of people in their lives, that's probably, you have that moment in life where you kind of wake up almost. And that was definitely mine. At one point during the process, literally someone was had their hands on my foot, and he was giving me kind of myofascial release, and I was giving myself Reiki. And then suddenly he said he felt like a lightning rod. I had light shooting out of I felt like I had light shooting out of my head. I was going, I'm so happy. And I was like crying and laughing at the same time. It was like, I think that was a moment. I think that might have been, like within the whole process, I think that might have been a moment of awakening. He said he felt like he was like just an electrical rod.
At that moment, did a lot of old traumas just fall away, dissolve?
I think so, yeah, basically. It was hard to see. It felt like it was a process, the whole thing. I was painting sacred geometry at the time, and I felt like each painting was a portal. So I was kind of going, it was almost like I was on my own personal healing journey, and I was shedding and letting go of patterns, and yeah, and all sorts of things were going on. And I feel like I look back on that time, and some may say that that's one of the hardest times in your life. I didn't know where money was going to come from, anything. But I look back at that time and I wouldn't change it for the world, not in a million years. So, yeah.
It's amazing that sometimes we can be actually so attached to these old thought forms, old ways of being. And it does take something immense to us to just step out. And it is into the unknown, isn't it? Because we don't know where we're going.
No, no, we don't. Yeah, I think that's where we all are at the moment, right? In this world we're living in, I think if there's any one time in our lives to kind of stay in the present, it's now, because we do just have no idea what the future holds. It's all quite uncertain, but it's quite exciting as well.
I love in your blogs it's the detail you go into, and I would love to gain some more understanding of it. So could you tell us what's happening right now?
Right now,
Yeah,
there's a
no,
lot happening right
yeah.
now. Okay, so in terms of what's going on right now, that the over reaching kind of like energy is Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. And that was when we had the financial crash. And it's going to be there until 2023. And Capricorn is the structures of our lives, whether it be our personal structures or the governments or, you know, the corporations, things like that. And what Pluto does is it's the planet of transformation. So slowly but surely since 2008, and we've had things like the Jimmy Savile thing come up, and there's been certain and the banks being made to be more transparent, and then everything that's going on in the since kind of like COVID hit, it feels like the structure of our lives is kind of like disintegrating. And the idea is with Pluto is that there's a death, but then there's a rebirth. You know, there's a detoxification, there's an exposing of all the rot and, you know, and all that is putrid in our patriarchy, which is what Capricorn represents. Capricorn is the patriarchy, Cancer is the matriarchy. And so we're basically having a detoxification of that. So that's kind of like the overriding energy that's going on. And then in the meantime, at the moment, we have Uranus in Taurus, and that's been there since 2018, and it'll be there. It's a 7-year cycle. The 7-year itch is what I call Uranus. It's when we like to make changes, you know. So Taurus is the sign of the economy. So, and Uranus is the sign of revolution and change. And so this is kind of, and also awakening. And so it feels like on one level, we're having a kind of we could have a kind of complete innovation or complete overhaul change of the economic system. And then we can also, with Taurus, it's also our sense of safety. And Uranus is also within evolutionary astrology seen it as trauma. And so I think what is also coming up is probably all of our trauma around, we've all experienced in past lifetimes, you know, droughts or famines or wars where you don't have any money, you know, or anything to live on even. So I think that's kind of our survival issues. Everybody's are being kind of brought to the fore here for us to have a look at. And then the other thing that's going on is that if you think about what's going on since COVID hit, how many people are having a change of values, you know, change what really holds meaning to us now, you know, that's a very, very important thing. But then there's also, Uranus can also bring innovation of ecology and things like that, and how we treat the earth, because Taurus is Mother Earth. So there's a lot going on with that, and that's a 7-year cycle, as I said, and it'll be over in 2025. And so what we've got this year in particular in the here and now, and it's actually was exact on the 14th, which was Monday, which was quite a big day actually, because there was announcements made on that day, is we've got Saturn square Uranus. And these are two very, very different energies. And I've been putting quite a lot of thought into these two. This square was exact first in February, and then on the 14th of June, and then it will be in December, but they're never too far away from each other. So it's like the theme of this particular year. And just to go into where Saturn is at the moment, Saturn's in, I'm sorry, I'm just on a bit of a rant here. I feel like I'm the preacher in the pulpit. But anyway, Saturn is in Aquarius at the moment. And Aquarius is, Saturn limits, it's like authority and control and the government and things like that. And it's also taking responsibility for things as well. So, and discipline. But Aquarius is our right to protest. It is our right to gather in groups. And it's interesting that Saturn originally went into Aquarius on the 23rd of March 2020, which is when we went into lockdown. So that's quite interesting. It's literally the capacity to gather with like-minded souls, with our friends. And it's also, Aquarius is also technology. So there is the potential for control, authoritarian control through technology, but there's also Saturnian reality, virtual reality. Here we are on Zoom instead of doing it in person, and all that brings, you know, the there's some good things that come from it, obviously, but then Saturn can also give us a bit of a reality check with this, you know, and what is, you know, how does this affect our health, you know, and how does it affect, you know, how does it affect us in general, and also, you know, how can we be tracked, and, you know, things like that, you know. So then we've got, yeah, I guess that's the main themes around Saturn in Aquarius, but I do like to look at the positives as well. And Saturn in Aquarius is very much about us taking responsibility almost on a ground level for the Aquarian, the vision of a better world. And I think that there's been a tendency for us all to just give our power away. We give our power away to the government and say, okay, you make the decisions for us. Wait, you just do that, and I'll just get on with my life, and, you know, and I'm comfortable with that. And then also you could say daddy government and mommy healthcare system. Oh yeah, just you know, stick that in my arm, or give me that pill, or, you know. I think that it's time to take responsibility for ourselves within that. So then we've got the two of them as well, Saturn and Uranus, coming up against each other. They're square each other, they're challenging. And so this is, you know, you've got Saturn, control, versus Uranus, freedom. You've got like fear, Saturn, the desire for change, Uranus. You've got government, the rebel, or government, the people, Uranus. Or you've got there's the old, the traditional ways, and then the new, Uranus. And then you've got, this is an interesting one that I've been contemplating as well, is that Saturn is the limits of our reality. It's as far as reality go. It used to be the last planet in the our system that we could see. And so we thought Saturn was it. So that's the limits. That's the end. It was death. It was, you know. And then Uranus came along, interestingly enough, and someone found Uranus, which has a very erratic orbit. It's kind of a bit of a maverick planet. And it kind of blasted it out of the water. You know, it's like, oh my God, oh, the limits of our reality, you know, you see? And so that's what's going on in the here and now, potentially, is like, if you're too stuck in what you believe, or your programming, or your conditioning, or what society's taught you to do, Uranus comes along and blasts that away. And that can mean sometimes going a bit crazy, because this is what I thought was real, you know, and then you find out that actually it's not. And Uranus offers you a different, it's also about objectivity and perspective and seeing things from a different point of view. And so I wonder whether over the course of this year that's partly what we're going to be experiencing, is people who are too stuck in their conditioned programming or view of reality could go a bit mad. You know, there is that potential if Uranus kind of blasts that apart. It's Uranus is the energy of breakdown. So we break down in order to have a breakthrough. And you've seen that in many people's lives. You know, it's the point where something happens and they have kind of some kind of a mental or a spiritual breakdown, and then that leads to a greater understanding and insight and awakening. And so we have the potential for an awakening this year, but we also have a potential for the structure, Saturn, Uranus, breaking down, dismantling the structures of our lives, of government, of, you know, of the world. So it's quite exciting. And it could also be very unsettling and disorienting at the same time. So, and then there's one more thing to add to the mix, and that is that Neptune is a long range transit as well. It's been in Pisces, its own sign, since 2012, and will be there until 2025, which could be quite a shift, because there's a couple of moves happening in 2025. And Neptune is unconditional love. It's the collective. It's sacrificing something for the better, for the greater good. And I think that that's something that we all have to remember in the here and now, is to remember to have compassion for our fellow man, woman, and to, you know, remember that ultimately we're all in this together, albeit I remember seeing a little while back that we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats, which is very, very true. But to have kindness and compassion towards one another, but also Neptune and Pisces could also lead us to just want to completely numb out and just completely escape reality. And it can be virtual reality as well, and just kind of like drugs or alcohol or reading a lot, or but I think also we have to be kind to ourselves and go, well, sometimes, you know, it helps to have a little bit of a respite from reality. So yeah, so that's the picture at the moment for this year and for the foreseeable future.
I guess we've been seeing for a while anyway that we're seeing the truth of these old structures. We're seeing they do not serve humanity in our highest vision. So for us to move on, I think before it was said we got to change the structure, but maybe it's the complete dismantling of it, which then we can move forward into something that we don't know. And I guess that will come with a lot of fear because we don't know what's going to be created.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is that kind of push and pull between the Uranus, and that's in our personal lives and collectively. We want change. I know a lot of people at the moment that kind of like, they want things to change. They want the new, they want the new vision. And there seems to be a lot of people forming communities and things like that. But then there's the fear, you know, fear is retracting, isn't it? I think the biggest lurgy at the moment in a way is fear. There's a lot of different reasons to be fearful at the moment, and that's the one thing I think we need to just do our best to not dwell in, because it's difficult not to feel fear, isn't it? It's just a case of trying not to stay there. But yeah, and I think that the complete dismantling seems kind of inevitable, but we don't know what it looks like, do we? What will the world look like?
I guess because I was talking to my niece and nephew, they only know a world now of Zoom, computers, and phones. I remember the vinyl record player. I remember just going around to your friend's house, knocking on the door, and see if they were in.
Yes.
These kind of things, yeah.
And waiting for a whole hour when you were going to meet someone because, you know,
Yeah.
they didn't turn up. You waited an hour. You gave them that.
Yeah, and they have no idea of that world of just looking for your friend. They don't have any idea about that world. So, and who would have thought that we would be here now doing this, being able to have conversations with people all over the world just like this? We would never have guessed it.
Yes. Yeah. There's another thing that popped in when you were talking about that is how somehow we used to be able to find the party, you know? We didn't have anywhere. You just somehow you'd find your friends and you'd know where they are. And now people have those kind of drop things, you know, on their phones. And that's how we find each other. It's completely changed, you know. I actually lost my phone, got smashed a couple of weeks ago, pure Mercury retrograde style. And I didn't have a phone for a week. Very refreshing. When I was out, I was just out. There was absolutely no distraction. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is the way it used to be. And who knows, it could be the way it may come back at some point.
Could you talk about the meaning behind retrograde? It's something, the word I hear quite a lot.
Yes.
You could explain what that means.
Yeah, retrograde is basically an illusion because the planets never actually go backwards. So it's more like, I actually heard someone describe retrograde as in a good way. It's like if you imagine that you've got the planets and they're going the same direction around the sun. This is what they're all doing. They're orbiting the sun. And so one car slows down slightly and the other one is going faster. It seems like the other one's going backwards. So basically it's an optical illusion. It's not real. But in the meantime, it does mean that, you know, in terms of Mercury, for instance, at the moment, Mercury is retrograde and it's going back through Gemini at the moment. So it's kind of, you have a shadow period before it goes retrograde. So it's going forward, and then it hits the retrograde, and then it goes back over the ground it's already gone over, and then it goes back again over the ground that it's already gone over. So it kind of goes like that way, back over, and that way. And so it's almost like you get a chance with Mercury retrograde to just stop and to kind of reflect, look back over things. Often people pop up from your past if you have unfinished business with them, things like that. Maybe they have messages for you. Maybe you have something important to tell you, or you them. And so, yeah, but Mercury retrograde is also a time, obviously, this is what everybody hears about, and it does happen, because my phone just smashed, that things can go wrong on the realm of communication. So anytime a planet is going backwards, basically you have a chance to kind of go back over ground that you've already covered, which can be very useful to do that and to reflect. I remember one time it was Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and I was about to move country, and I was going through all of my things, and suddenly I found myself, Cancer, the family, looking back over, going through every single photograph I had. And it was just pure coincidence that I happened to be doing that at that time, but it was so powerful. And it really just took me on a trip down memory lane, and I shared photos with different family members, and we talked and revisited. And so that's the power of the retrograde. I actually, in your chart, you've got Mercury retrograde in your natal chart. I think that this would be a kind of almost a time for you coming into your own, really, Mercury retrograde. But it's Mercury retrograde in your natal chart means you like to think for yourself. Nobody's going to tell you how to think or what to think, so you're probably more on the right-brained intuitive rather than the left-brained really rational logical type, so which probably makes sense. But it's also it's in its own house, so it's in a very powerful position, Mercury, for the mind and communication. It makes sense that you're doing this because it's in the house of media. The planet of communication is in the house of communication. So yeah, that's very helpful in terms of being a communicator and a listener. You're a very good listener.
So when we are born, do we choose, does a soul choose to be born at a certain time? So the energies that are around, the planetary energies, can help fulfill the destiny or the purpose of that particular soul body.
Absolutely. I mean, that's my belief system anyway. But yeah, I think that we do, as souls, that we pick a particular time to pop out, and to particular parents. And it has been said, and I kind of I'm resonating with this more and more as I go along, that our rising sign is exactly the same every single lifetime. So the house structure is the same and the rising sign is the same, but where the planets are is different. And I think that's quite interesting. But some people, when I do their charts, say, oh, I haven't got anything in that house or anything in that sign. And my feeling is that that's because it's not your lifetime to be developing that. It's not a big focus for you in this lifetime. You're more drawn towards this, and these are your lessons that you've picked up to kind of work on as a soul in order to evolve in this lifetime. So yeah.
So as a soul, would we pick a particular place and time and particular parents who will facilitate us in the growth of that
Yeah.
particular mind body?
Yeah. Within astrology, there's a Cancer Capricorn polarity, which we've just mentioned is patriarchy, matriarchy, but Cancer is our family, and Capricorn is our almost like our conditioning, but it's also our sense of maturity and taking responsibility. And I feel that we have the parents that we've been born into, the family experience that we've been born into, but ultimately we need to also move towards that Capricorn polarity and take responsibility for how we've grown. And maybe we chose those parents, maybe we are actually more responsible for this, and instead of blaming them, going, oh, this happened and that happened and you did this to me, it's more of a, okay, well, how did I grow and how did I learn from this experience? But that of course takes time, and maybe sometimes you go through the Aries square, which is a bit of anger on the way to that understanding and that maturity of Capricorn. Does that make sense? Like, yeah.
And I guess even that anger or the rejection is important part of our growth, isn't it? We're learning. And then we don't no longer blame, but we can, as you said, take responsibility. Things have happened to us, okay. But now we're here, we're now, what can we do going forward?
Exactly. Yes. And yeah, and how can we, in a way, I'm sure that everything that's happened to us on another level is part of our superpowers as well. You know, it gives you compassion and empathy, doesn't it? If you've experienced, for whatever you've experienced. And also maybe your soul needed that in this particular lifetime, and you needed, say, for instance, you needed to work on your sense of emotional security. Okay, this is your kind of work for this lifetime. Well, you're probably going to be born to family members that are unable to meet your emotional needs, because you're going to be forced back on yourself in order to learn how to take care of your own emotional needs and not be a needy, insecure person. So, or soul. So yeah, I think there's a lot of growth, and I think Capricorn on the other side of things. If you're to go into the negative Capricorn, then it's too much of repression of emotions and too much of, like, you know, not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, which is Cancer, the opposite. So there's downsides of everyone. So Capricorn can go too far as well. Take responsibility, but don't repress your emotions.
Before you spoke briefly, you just touched on it about past lives.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that do we bring into our present life? And do we still carry some of the trauma that was in our past life in current experiences?
Yeah, that shows up very much within the astrological chart. And, you know, within, I guess this is my belief system, and this is the type of astrology I work with. But in another sense, it can show up in the chart just generally. You know, it can often, what happens is that whatever some of the trauma that we've experienced in past lives, specifically around the nodes of the moon within astrology, can play out in our early childhood. So it can be kind of somewhat recreated. And then over the course of our lifetime, we're prompted, or our growth lies in is moving forward to our north node. But yeah, within evolutionary astrology, the Pluto and the south node of the moon correlate to our past life experience and how we're picking up from that in this lifetime. And on Uranus relates to trauma, which is, Uranus is our long-term memory, and the long-term memory can hold superpowers, it can hold skills, things that we have kind of buried in our memory banks, and it can also be trauma. And so I think that at certain times in our lives, and I often see this within the chart, that say Uranus will be being triggered or Pluto will be being triggered, and suddenly you'll have a kind of specifically with Uranus, you'll have a memory spontaneously emerge. I remember hearing about this guy this is not traumatic, by the way, this is more of a kind of a positive spin on it. But this guy, and it was his Uranus opposition, which is a very important transition point for us all, around 40 years old-ish, 42 years old. And he had this spontaneous memory. Well, suddenly, basically, he had his Uranus opposition and suddenly started playing the piano, kind of like a full-on concerto, I think. And he had no idea where this came from. It just spontaneously arose in him. But if you think about it, he was suddenly remembering parts of yourself that you have put away. And often with trauma, we put parts of ourselves away because we detach, don't we? We kind of like, you leave parts of yourself behind, I think, when you have a traumatic experience. It's kind of like a fracturing of your soul almost. And so at certain times in our life, we might spontaneously remember these traumatic experiences, which can be quite unsettling and disorienting, but also can really help us to remember, to bring those parts of ourselves back, you know? I don't know, does that make sense in terms of the astrology?
And I guess we're a fractured human society, aren't we? With many years or centuries of trauma, and especially in this patriarchal society of divisions of culture and race, and which I guess what you're saying is that Pluto and is bringing into maybe looking at bringing it a matriarchal
Yes,
for the balance.
yes, yeah. That is what, there's always the polarity. So Pluto's in Capricorn right now, but yes, that means where we ultimately, it will be good to work on the matriarchal side of things, you know, more inclusivity and, you know, less about the greed and the getting ahead in life and success. And that does seem to be what kind of came up and has really come up for people. I've heard a lot of people recently saying, what's more important? You know, actually, am I supposed to be working 5 days a week? You know? And that's kind of like come about from a patriarchal society in a way, hasn't it? This getting ahead business.
And it's something a word you said a few times, which was compassion. And I think you used it it's a superpower in a sense that has been, I guess, discarded or has been seen as being a weakness, especially in the systems that we live in. And how would us now just embodying this change this world that we live in right now?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that every day is an opportunity to do that, right? Every single moment in every single day of every person that you meet, just try to put yourself in their shoes, you know? I think that the way that this society has been set up, it's not only kind of compassion that's taken a bit of a back step. It is also our intuition, like the feminine intuition has been made to feel irrational or stupid, or because you have emotions, that Cancer emotions come up, but the emotions are what kind of teach you, you know, it helps you to have emotions, to have compassion for other people, you know. But there's a lot of the feminine that has been kind of squashed in all of us, you know, male and female. And we've all got memories of adverse, being treated badly by the patriarchy, every one of us, you know, so we're all carrying that. I don't know what the way forward is, but I truly believe this is the way I kind of live my life, or try to, that every conversation I have is an opportunity to be the best person that I can be, you know. It's not just our intimate relationships that can trigger us or can uh, nudge us into kind of being a good person. I don't mean a good person or a bad person, but into our negative patterns or into our positive patterns, you know. But compassion is so important. It's so important. I think there's quite a few people that have got cut off from that completely and utterly in order to carry on and do the things that they do. It's like, where is it? Where has their empathy for other human beings gone? So I guess that's the psychopaths and the sociopaths, right? The people that have gone so far into that kind of like the Pluto in Capricorn business, and they're not able to kind of feel anymore. So they do these things that just are astounding, you know?
So by looking at evolutionary astrology, we can look at human society from a historical sense then, can't we? what was happening, what was aligning in 1000 or 400 BC. Have you discovered things that you've thought, oh wow, I now realize why this happened at this particular time by looking at the charts?
Yes. What, by looking at the charts as in history?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's off the top of my head, the first thing that popped into my mind was the Second World War and that kind of time. We had Uranus in Taurus then, and that was just after the Great Depression. So there was some correlations going on then. There was also the thing that kind of kick-started this whole kind of COVID situation in a way, was Saturn-Pluto conjunction that everybody had been waiting for. You know, Saturn is control and Pluto is power in Capricorn. So it was a very strong conjunction that often sparks off a war, interestingly enough. And there was a Pluto-Saturn conjunction, I believe, in, I can't remember whether it was a conjunction or a square, but I think it was a conjunction. So don't quote me on this one. But it was back then as well my brain's just gone, during the time of the Second World War, around that time. And of course there was a lot of going on in terms of like the power structures and mass manipulation and, you know, all sorts of things going on that were kind of like, there is a certain correlation with then to now. So yeah, it's interesting how things do repeat. And I remember that Neptune was in Pisces when Dickens was around. And you think about what he wrote about, his was very much about the rich poor divide, which we're also seeing, you know, and how I remember in A Christmas Carol, how the kind of the family, the poor family, just had such a beautiful connection with each other, you know, and so much love and joy, and they were always trying to see the good in everything, even though they had nothing. And little tiny Tim or something that had his like crutches and everything, and then you had Scrooge, who was almost like the epitome of this Pluto and Capricorn situation we have now, and he was like, you know, destroyed by his greed really, and his desire for power and to kind of accrue loads of money. So it's interesting that Dickens, I always go back to that Dickens was around during that, and it does, we're seeing that again now in a way, the difference between who has and who has not. And I will say that some of the most beautiful times in my life, and when life flows the most, there's more synchronicity and love and empathy, is when I've had nothing. It's always been, you know who your friends are, and people tend to really take care of each other when they have nothing. It's almost like the more you have, the more you have to protect in some respects. You know, I'm not saying that of everybody by any stretch of the imagination, but, you know, it does show itself.
I think so, because I guess if you don't have, you understand what it's like. You've lived it as a true experience for yourself. You know it, you
Empathy.
feel it, you've seen it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So can we use this? How do we use evolutionary astrology as a guide going forward?
I suppose, I mean, the charts that I do for people give people a sense of where they're going in life, you know, what their souls need in order to evolve. That's what happens within the natal chart. Within the here and now and what's going on in history, I think, as you intuited, it is very helpful to look back into history in order to learn about the present. And because, you know, history, and especially when you can see it in terms of patterns around astrological patterns, and you can see what was happening then and how it might repeat itself now. And in that respect, you can see, you know, in the future, what might happen based on what happened in the past. And also you can see with Pluto, the Pluto is quite important because it's about a 20-year span through a sign. we've got Pluto about to leave Capricorn in 2023 and go into Aquarius. Okay, so Saturn is the detoxing, you know, exposing the darkness. Are we then going to have the exposure of the dark side of the Aquarian vision, you know? And what's wrong with that? So first we kind of have the structures and the corporations and the banks and the governments and things like that. They're getting the kind of like the detoxification, and you know, and then we'll move towards the Aquarian vision. I'll be interested to see what happens there, but it makes me think of, you know, Animal Farm and things like that. Or is it going to be utopia or dystopia? I don't know. Yeah, so Pluto's quite good for generational, to see what's going on in a generational sense. Oh, and then Uranus is going to go into Gemini, and that could be artificial intelligence. Could be, you know, things like that coming up. We'll see.
I just had this image when you were speaking of us learning as children in completely different kind of schools, the energy field, what astrology is, understanding what goes on. And from that way, from that sense of being, if we knew how they were going to align, we could prepare for certain things as a humanity. And how would that be? Then it will be quite extraordinary. Our whole lives would understand certain fields and certain propensities for things, because we'd understand where planets are aligned, how that will help us do certain things, or maybe not do certain things in particular ways.
I mean, you never actually know how it's going to actually manifest. I mean, I saw, or would have seen before I broke my heel, oh goodness, you're going to have your Pluto square, the Pluto's on top of your North Node, all of these, like this crazy alignment. No idea that what would actually happen to me, you know. And I say that to people when I do people's charts. You know, we know the energy of what might come. And I suppose, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the people who have power in this world use astrology. Definitely. That's my sense. It's been somewhat poo-pooed in the mainstream and has been ridiculed and, you know, made into you know, people making it into the pseudoscience, or, you know, but it feels like astrology's kind of, it's coming back through, interestingly, through the blogs, I think, in a way, through people, because you happen across a blog and you read it and you go, oh my goodness, that is what's going on in the world today. And so more and more people are becoming more aware of how the planets affect what's going on for us all collectively. So it's quite interesting. But I have no doubt that it's been utilized. It's just, how do we utilize it as well?
Definitely. In some of the reading that I've done, there's no doubt here that they use times of the year, dates, certain people in control and in power to put certain laws into, put certain things, launch a product at a certain time.
Exactly.
The colors of their product is all, you know, down. They take this thing as a deep science, but I guess we as a populace don't see it that way in the whole.
Yes. I mean, I don't think it was a coincidence that it was Monday that was the moment when Saturn and Uranus were square, was the moment that we had an announcement of the 21st of June being cancelled, or, you know, being cancelled, but everything changes. And within that, there were people that went and protested, you know. And so, yeah, I think that that cannot be a coincidence, you know. If it was, it's magic, but I'm not sure that it was magic in this case. So.
And I guess in what you were saying before, these old structures fall. So this information now comes to all of us, to each individual person, for themselves to grow for themselves, you know, to learn for themselves. And I go back to what you said as well about your teacher. It's time for you to go on now. So we take responsibility and we can learn from what's going on. And that way, everything becomes quite magical in a sense, quite extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that, yeah, it is an amazing ride we're on here. I think it is about kind of seeing the magic in life and recognizing the, what's the word? The signs, and utilizing things like this. And I think that's where the blogs come in. There's quite a few people writing astrological blogs at this point, or doing videos and things, and it just is really helpful for people to know that we're all in this together. You may have a different reaction, you may be going through something different within all of this, but we've got how we're all being impacted individually by what's going on, but then we've got what's going on in the collective, which is, it's just very helpful to be able to see that. So
And I think people are being drawn together. Just the story of how I found you, I don't even know. I was on a site and your blog came up, and I was actually looking to speak to an astrologer. So I saw this and I went, okay, let me send you a message. That was it.
yeah, perfect synchronicity, and yeah, just following the yep. I think actually I was thinking about this recently, that I really feel that we are being called to just let life unfold, that trying to control too much is not possible at the moment. Does that make sense? I don't know, it's just a feeling that like you found me, it just suddenly kind of, it just pinged. You weren't trying, you had it in your mind that you wanted to. I think maybe this is where this Neptune in Pisces business goes in. It's just like, allow the flow of life. It's really hard to plan ahead at the moment because everything is so uncertain. But if you just let it kind of like, just almost like set the intention, the vague intention of what you want, and then just let it go, then I know this is the key to life in general. I'm not saying it's a new concept, but it just feels ever so important at the moment to kind of live in the present and to allow life to just unfold as it will, rather than, it feels almost impossible to try and force anything. I don't know if you're feeling that, but I certainly am. Yeah.
So if we've chosen the time of our birth to facilitate us in our growth as individual souls, would we also like it to coincide with others who are on similar paths?
I would say so, yeah. That's my sense. And I feel that we're all here at this moment in time to witness this massive change. I think I've got a sense that there are some highly evolved souls around at this time who are here to witness a birth of a new world. We'll see what that looks like in the next couple of years. But I also feel like, this is my feeling, is that there are also soul groups, aren't there? There's people that we resonate with. There's our soul tribe that are quite important to us, and you know them when you meet them. Because you've known each other before, and it's just like somehow you have the same ethos almost, or a similar kind of thing that you're trying to achieve in life, and it's just natural.
So we have our I guess our physical family, genetic family, that we're born into these bodies, but from the wider scheme of consciousness, maybe we also have others who we would like to, a soul family, a soul tribe. And even from there, it allows us to move on to a single consciousness. We are all in this together. So it's like we can go up the steps on the ladder.
Yes. Yeah. I think that that concept of we're all in this together can be quite abstract for people, can't it? Oh no, I'm not like that person over there on the street, but you are. It could just as easily be you. Just in the same token as like, it's important for us to get in touch with our inner psychopath, or our inner politician or someone that kind of triggers us on the outside world, you know, someone that you're like, that you get really mad about and really angry about. Okay, so why are you getting so angry? Have a look at yourself, because we all probably have at some point in our history been the perpetrator, and we've all been the victim. So I think that maybe is where empathy is not only having empathy for the downtrodden in life, but it's also having empathy for the people in power. And that's something that maybe people don't tap into as much, because it's very easy to judge.
And that leads into this question I was going to ask you. What do you learn when you give a reading?
Oh my goodness, so much. Yeah, I mean, is an absolute joy and a privilege to do these charts for people. It is very much a fast track to some quite deep, quite intimate information. And I do pride myself on being a non-judgmental person, because we've all got our own shit, just different versions of it, you know. And I often find that when I do, same with the Reiki, I do a chart for someone, there's usually something in their story that meets my story on some level. And I'm often so kind of inspired by people and what they've been through and the hardship that they've had. And, you know, a chart can show, you know, like what experiences you had as a child, but it can also, I like to focus predominantly on the potential. And okay, you've had these experiences, but how can they serve you in your future, and what is your kind of divine potential in this lifetime, you know? But every person has something to teach me, you know. And one of the big lessons for me is to really truly listen and to hear what they are saying as a human being. I'm just not just seeing this chart. The chart is a human, you know, so I can't get stuck in, oh, but you have that in that sign. Oh, it must mean this. No. That it's their experience of that. So I do my best to kind of guide and not tell them who they are, but rather see it as a collaboration between them and me, and an exploration into who they are and what their potential is. So that's been quite a big learning for me, because I think when I was a little bit more insecure, maybe I would launch in and go blah, 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 and be like, you know, I am a Leo, so I'm quite, with the Gemini rising, so I'm quite a good talker, and I can get on, you know, and be the performer, but that's not ultimately what it's about. So I think I have learned a lot from an evolutionary astrologer called Mark Jones, and he did a course on counseling for astrology. And one of the things he does in his readings, and I've had a reading with him, is say, how can I help you today? And when you do that, you put yourself in quite a vulnerable position, because then you're leaving it up to the universe. You're leaving it up to you're putting it out of your control. You know, it's within your control when you're just delivering a performance, and this is your chart as I see it. But it's very different when you say, how can I help you today? And then it gives them, and then you get back from them, and then you have to kind of respond to that and then allow it to flow. So I learned a lot from him saying that, and it's really helped my practice.
So when you go into, I guess, any meeting, any conversation, and you want to learn, then there's an openness already, isn't there? There is this connection already. There's someone over there who can teach me things, who I can learn from, and where I can grow. And from there, I guess then every experience, then every single one is a growing experience.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable, and sometimes you can have moments, you know, I've had a couple of moments during this where I kind of like go out of focus. You know, you have to be present. it's a very good lesson in being present. And if you suddenly go into again, like future tripping or thinking what you might say next, and then you miss what they've actually said. So you've got to kind of like be here now with that person and be really truly listening to them. And then it flows more. Getting too stuck in the head can be very dangerous. So
where is this flow going to be taking us today and tomorrow in regards to the energies aligning? What are the possibilities for us, for you and I, for everyone?
in there today and tomorrow,
Yes.
as in what's going on in the chart just at the here
Yes.
and now? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that's a question I wasn't expecting at all. Well, at the moment, I'm just trying to think of what's going on in the here and now. We've got the moon is in Virgo at the moment, which is about humility. And so, yeah, and about the beauty of Virgo is Virgo can cause us to be a bit hard on ourselves and a bit perfectionistic, but in the same token, it can also help us to humble ourselves and to be of service to others. That is a very helpful one. I actually haven't really looked. I'm for an astrologer, I tend to not really look too far ahead. I think that's just that's who I am as a human being. But that's the one thing that I do absolutely know that's going on. We also have the sun coming to the end of Gemini, and Mercury is still retrograde at the moment in Gemini, and it's been quite a Mercury retrograde season. I know a lot of people have had technological difficulties, and my phone broke and etc. And Gemini in general is very chatty and talky and and busy, and so it's been quite kind of like a communicative and busy time, certainly for me, but I think for a lot of people, which is fun. But I think with Gemini can go out into the world and be like, I want to learn this, I want to know, I want to be around people and talk. And then you kind of go, okay, I've got information overload now, retreat. So yeah, but that's basically what's going on at the moment.
Do you sometimes do a reading and information just comes to you and you comes out of you and you have no idea where it's come from?
Yes. It's usually when I get the goosebumps. Or I have a moment where I'll be talking to someone and with their chart, and I'll just kind of like, yeah, as you said, suddenly I'll just be like something, it'll come out, blah, 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 and then I'll start crying and getting goosebumps all at the same time. And it's like, that's my body's way of telling me that I'm kind of, this is very important information for them. So yeah, it's always quite gratifying when that happens, to be honest. So it means you're in flow, I suppose. But I also, sorry to, yeah, I also do, before I do a reading, I do connect. I sit there and connect and and ask for whatever help there is, and also that the reading be for their highest good. So then you're trusting that it's all going to come out the way it's supposed to, or you hope so anyway.
Would you call being in that place meditation?
Yeah, I guess meditation in action, right? On some level, but it is, yeah, meditation. It is just about kind of like being in the here and now, which is what meditation is, right? It's being present in the moment. And I do find, I mean, I've had a couple of experiences in my life doing a chart where I've lost that, where they've looked at me funny, or their eyes are kind of like, they look like they're not understanding what I'm saying. And then that's knocked me off. And then I really feel that self-worth is very much connected to your intuition. And if your self-worth takes a knock and your confidence takes a knock, then you lose it. And it was quite a torturous experience, but one particular reading was the worst of my life. It was horrible. But it was literally because I'd lost my confidence. So, and it's just about, I think when you do that, I think it's about then take a few deep breaths, reconnect, and then go back into it instead of trying to force your way through. you know. Yeah, it's all about connection, isn't it? It really is, when it comes down to it. Even if you don't think that you're being intuitive or connected, you are. You are.
I guess we can't help but be connected because there only is, in reality, connection.
But I think some people think that they're supposed to hear, like, be bashed over the head or hear voices, but everybody's got a different way of connecting and understanding and hearing and listening. So I think, yeah, mine seems to be quite physical in a way. That's my signs anyway, is the goosebumps. And that moment when you talk to a client, or, you know, talk to someone and you mention something and you get goosebumps and then they get goosebumps. And it's so beautiful, you know. That's the what life is all about for me, you know. That's what it I love those moments of connection. And I love the intimacy of a chart reading, of that, you know, it's quite, as I said, it's quite personal information that I feel quite honored to be a part of. I mean, I think that some people have, you know, you can go to counseling for many, many months and you might not get to the place that you do with the astrological reading in 1 hour or an hour and a half. And that's where it's important to be as sensitive and kind and, you know, and compassionate as possible.
Amy, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for the opportunity that you've given me to hear your work, to learn about you, learn about what you've done. And just to speak to you, it's been a pleasure, and just a fortune that for some reason I found your page. So
Yay.
again.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's been lovely to meet you as well. Been a very easy conversation.
Thank you. When I post it, I'll put the links to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll share it.
Find that, yeah, and they can get in contact with you.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it was lovely. I enjoyed it. I feel enlivened.
I'm Ranusha, and this has been Conversations on the Spiritual Journey with Amy. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.